Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about the Kansas State Wildcats. Yes, I know it is late, I am tired, but the Cats absolutely have me wired. At the time you're seeing this, it is in the morning. I'm recording it the night before, giving you my post-game thoughts, reaction to really everything that went down in Game 1. And I wanted to touch on a couple of different things. I'm sure that you guys have already thought about all of these in great detail, but I want to bounce some ideas off you and give you some things to think about going into Week 2 against Troy. Now, I know that the immediate thing here to look at, this is SEMO, it's not Texas, it's not Texas Tech, it's not, one of the top teams in the Big 12, it's not one of those teams. SEMO still had some absolute studs that K-State had to game plan for. And we went out there and delivered the first 600-yard offensive performance since 2005. And let me toss it out there. That's crazy. That is unbelievable. That is outstanding to hear. Will Howard was a man among boys. I don't have to tell you that. I'm sure you all saw it. But in case you didn't, I will give you a recap. 296 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving touchdown. He became the 7th player in Big 12 history to have at least a receiving touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and a passing touchdown in the same game. It took Will 1/2. On that list, the only name I recognized off the jump, I'm sure there's more, I didn't really look that hard, was Jalen Hurts. Anytime you're in a list with Jalen Hurts, you're probably doing something great. Will Howard was spectacular today. And it was unbelievable to see. And not only that, you also saw a glimpse of the future with Avery Johnson. K-State's future is so bright. Will Howard said it himself. The future of K-State football is bright as long as that kid's here. Avery Johnson stepped in, and it was electric. It made me feel, and I know I'm spoiled for those of you that aren't Chiefs fans, I hate to use this comparison. It made me feel like I was watching a guy like Patrick Mahomes, where you can scramble forever and not get caught. It feels like a vintage video game where you're using Mike Vick in Madden 2004. Nobody can catch you. That's the vibe I get from Avery Johnson. Every time he drops back, it's like there's not a player that can sack him. That's just not how it works in my mind yet. And to be fair, we don't technically know if he can be sacked since it hasn't been proven firsthand. We don't know if it's physically even possible at this point. Will Howard and Avery Johnson exploded. K-State wins 45-0. This is the first shutout over SEMO in 47 games. That's like 4 years of college football. And you think about all the good teams they've played, it's not like they've played, scrubs every single year. I know they're in the Ohio Valley Conference. It's different than the Big 12. But they still have those Week 1 openers against bigger and better teams, like teams that could be shutting them out on a weekly basis. K-State did that. They handled business. And it was without 2 of K-State's biggest players. Keegan Johnson was on the sideline, in street clothes, didn't suit up. Apparently he got nicked up earlier in the week and just wasn't ready to go. I'm sure that if they forced him, it would have been a bad idea. But they didn't really need Keegan Johnson out there for Week 1. Obviously, we all were excited to see him, but he'll be back. I don't know whether it'll be against Troy or against Missouri, but I'm sure we'll see Keegan here soon. The receiving corps stepped up in his absence. My guy, R.J. Garcia. Garcia looked like a beast. 5 catches, over 100 yards, massive receiving touchdown, and the heads-up play to recover the fumble from Ben Sinnott. You had 2 receivers over 100 yards in the first game with R.J. Garcia and Ben Sinnott. Neither of those are technically your primary receiving option. I mean, Ben Sinnott, you can make the case for. I don't mean to just dunk on Ben like that. But technically, Keegan Johnson's brought in to be your number 1 guy. And I don't mean to shade Ben Sinnott. I know I said that, but I really just want to hammer home. I'm not here to shade Ben Sinnott. In his first game of the 2023 season, he set a new career high in receiving yards with 5 catches for 100 yards. His previous high to this point was 89 yards. I'm pretty sure it was in the Baylor game, but you can go back and double check that. Ben Sinnott is going to absolutely thrash every K-State tight end receiving record. And I've said that on the channel before. I know people have said that on social media. But that is the reoccurring thing in my head. That was 1/2, and Ben Sinnott was virtually unstoppable. I mean, that was the real situation we're dealing with Ben Sinnott. We've got a guy who can be a top 2 NFL round draft pick, in 2024. And I've mentioned it in the past. Mel Kiper had him on his big boards as the 3rd best tight end in the country, behind Brock Bowers and Jatavian Sanders. I think by the end of the season, Ben Sinnott could easily be the 2nd guy. I mean, I just don't see anybody leapfrogging. Not that Brock Bowers, that Ben Sinnott couldn't be close to Brock Bowers, what the case is. I just think mainstream media is going to always pick Brock Bowers because that's kind of the way it's set up right now. But guys that caught my eye. I mean, DJ Giddens ran for 128 yards. He might be the Big 12's leading rusher right now. If you can go through and look, I can't tell you anybody off the top of my head. I mean, Richard Reese from Baylor was picked as the number 1 running back in the preseason media ballot. He had 7 carries for 14 yards, and he might have gotten banged up. I didn't fully watch the Baylor game. Also, don't know what happened there. That was ridiculous. But K-State has 2 solid stud running backs. Trayshawn Ward looks shifty. He looks like a tough dude to bring down. DJ's running hard. You just have a really great sense of offense with this team. And I know Will Howard mentioned it post-game, and I kind of wanted to just reiterate what he said. While it is, the opponent isn't anybody too ridiculous. And Will didn't say this. This is me paraphrasing that part. What he said is that this is one of the best offensive performances in week 1 in the time that he's been here, and even in the 5 or 6 years before that. Like, week 1 hasn't really been like these dudes are ready to go. You played South Dakota, you shut them out. I think it was 28-0 or 31-0. It was good, but it wasn't fully like, you didn't see a complete team. This team today was a complete team. Everybody on the team played for one another. Guys that caught my eye, Jacob Parrish, man. Jacob Parrish was a stud. And I've been hyping up Kobe Savage, VJ Payne at the safety position, and I've kind of been not necessarily overlooking Jacob Parrish as a DB, but I just haven't been giving him the love and praise this man deserves. That dude was everywhere, sideline to sideline. He kept up with SEMO's #1 receiver, a kid that's been invited to the Senior Bowl or is on the Senior Bowl watch list. Only one player in the history of the Redhawks has ever been invited to the to the Senior Bowl from SEMO. This receiver's already on the watch list as a sophomore, just to give you the perspective of how good this kid is. K-State's defense goes out and holds a 2-time All-American to negative rushing yards. Negative rushing yards. This is a guy who ran for 1,700 yards and 21 scores last season. He was basically the best player in all of FCS football. And I know that people can probably dispute that, but that's where this kid ranked. Like, his ceiling was unbelievably high. K-State bottled him up every single touch. He was the guy circled, you're not getting past us. And you saw that from guys on the defensive line like Uso. And there's something about Uso, and I know you guys can probably relate. He is someone that I am so excited seeing him on the field. Like, he's a dude I see out there, and I'm just pumped. I'm amped up. Uso is a dog. That guy's going to be ready. Nate Matlack looked fully healthy for the first time in 2 or 3 years now. I guess 2 years. He looked healthy. He was getting after the passer, had a sack in this game. Brendan Mott as well getting after the passer. You had Khalid Duke coming in for a sack. It was a really, really solid performance from everybody involved. And I know I've kind of run through a couple of guys in key moments of what I wanted to talk about, but you don't put up 600 yards of offense if you're a bad offense, no matter who you're playing. That's just not how it works. K-State goes out there and dominates. From whistle to whistle, Chris Klieman has elevated the expectation in Manhattan. Will Howard, and I know there was a bunch of stellar performances in week 1, and I know people look at it and say, well, week 1 doesn't really matter. It'll be down the road. Week 5, 6, 7, we get to learn a little bit more about the Heisman ballot. Will Howard, if nothing else, even though it's SEMO, put himself out there to say, hey, I'm a quality enough player that I can win a Heisman this season. And I know that everybody's focused on Travis Hunter or Shadur Sanders from Colorado at the moment because they both had stellar performances in their first game, upsetting TCU 45-42, I think. I could be wrong on the score. Will Howard went out and said, hey, guys, I'm here. I'm here. And I know you saw a couple of big performances in the Big 12 alone. You saw Dylan Gabriel throw for 300 yards in 1 half alone. You saw Emory Jones from Cincinnati, I think, have 6 or 7 total touchdowns on the day. Will Howard goes out there and proves, hey, I am the best quarterback in the Big 12 on a consistent basis. That's what you saw today. And I cannot wait to see that against Troy. If nothing else, guys, and I can kind of reiterate some of these thoughts as I'm going forward, and I'm sure I'll have another video looking ahead to Troy here in the next couple of days. I did post a preview for SEMO. I'm going to try to post it a couple of days before the game next time. Things just kind of got out of hand, and I got a little behind on stuff. So that's why that video dropped so late, dropped the day of. I'm going to drop the Troy video maybe Friday, I would say, or yeah, probably around Friday, looking ahead to Troy. And I'll tell you this right now before I get into this in the video. Guys, don't be worried about Troy. Separate last year's hatred for that Tulane team, that pain you felt. Separate those two things. These are two different teams completely. Not just K-State, but Troy and Tulane are two vastly different teams. I think Troy won their first game. You should go watch their highlights. They looked good, but they're also playing SF Austin, Stephen F. Austin. So I just think what's important for all of us to keep the expectations in mind. Like, we're not just going to go from this to absolutely 150 yards passing and nothing working. K-State is here to stay, and that's what I got from this game. And I know it's kind of sporadic and rambly in this video, but I just wanted to give you some of my post-game comments, almost like a locker room speech or addressing the media, whatever the case is. Just wanted to tell you what's on my mind and what I'm excited for going forward. Guys, I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're not too hungover today. You've had some water and some ibuprofen. If not, go ahead and get you some. I know that is probably helpful after a day of tailgating.